Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Football Betting Series here on YouTube Premier League Edition. Our December record stands at 6 wins, 3 losses with a push and a total monthly profit of £49 on the nose. When we add that to our overall record, the series stands at 59 wins, 21 losses with 7 pushes and a total series profit of £661 and 79 pence. I've got 3 more picks in today's episode, so if you think I'm talking some sense, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Without further ado, let's get into it. Our first pick sees top of the table Arsenal facing bottom of the table Wolverhampton Wanderers. And Arsenal, they were bested by Aston Villa in their last game. Matty Cash put the Villains 1-0 ahead just around half an hour into the match when he snuck in at the back post to finish across the goalkeeper. However, Arsenal would battle back early on in the second period. Saka's pullback was then converted by Trossard to give the Gunners a foothold in the match. However, the game was evenly contested in the second period, and it did appear that both sides would play out a competitive score draw. That was until a mad scramble in the penalty box deep in stoppage time saw Emi Buendía pop up as he smashed the ball past a helpless Raya to win the game for Aston Villa, 2-1. In terms of form, that loss now means that Arsenal's 11-game unbeaten stretch is now at an end. And across the last 3 Premier League games, it's been 1 win, 1 draw and 1 defeat, which isn't quite title-winning form, and they're going to need to return to winning ways if they are to stave off the challenge from the chasing pack. At home, however, Arsenal have won each of the last 4 matches at the Emirates. They're also unbeaten in their last 7 home games this season, winning 6 of these matches. They host a Wolves side who were thoroughly beaten in their last matchup against Manchester United. Bruno Fernandes made the breakthrough before Bellegarde's equaliser on the stroke of half-time to give the home side a bit of hope going into the second period. However, Manchester United would dominate the second half with an XG generated of 3.23, and they simply didn't let Wolves back into the game. Mbeumo scored 5 minutes into the second half, with Mount adding another around the hour mark. Then Fernandes ended the affair with his second and the Red Devils' fourth in the 4-1 victory. In terms of form, that defeat now means Wolves have lost 8 in a row, and on the road, Wolves have lost each of the last 4 matches. They're also winless in their 7 away games this season, with defeats in 6 of these games. When we take a look at the head-to-head records, the last encounter between these sides took place in January, back in Molineux. Ricardo Calafiori's goal was the only thing that separated the two sides in a 1-0 win for the Gunners. However, this was only part of the story, as in the 43rd minute, Miles Lewis-Skelly was sent off. Whilst Arsenal held their own with a man disadvantage, it was really only when João Gomez got sent off for Wolves in the second half could they make the breakthrough. Longer term, that win for Arsenal continues a 8-game winning streak over Wolves, and when we filter by games played at the Emirates, Arsenal have won each of the last 4 matchups. My prediction for today's game is that with the recent loss to Aston Villa, this fixture is an excellent opportunity for Arsenal to show some tenacity and mental toughness in a bounce back from a poor result. Whereas Wolves, I don't think they have really any hope here. They're a side playing without any confidence and look destined for the drop. As such, I'm going to back Arsenal for a full stake here in bet number 1. Our second selection sees 18th place West Ham playing 3rd place Aston Villa, and West Ham, they played out a score draw against Brighton in their last match. Jared Bowen put the Hammers 1-0 ahead in the 73rd minute, as Wilson reacted quickest from a defensive error and played in the Englishman for the opening goal of the game on the counter-attack. However, West Ham couldn't quite hold on to their precious 1-goal lead, and they were punished in the 91st minute when Jorginho Rutter knocked in his effort after a scramble in the box. The equaliser did come under controversial circumstances though, as many West Ham fans will argue that he did handle the ball in order to create the opportunity, and a free kick should have been given to the defending side. However, the officials did not see this way. The goal stood, and the final score finished 1-1. In terms of form, that result now means that West Ham are winless in their last 4, with 3 draws and a loss over this stretch. However, at home things are slightly better, with 2 wins coming in their last 3 games at the Olympic Stadium. They host an Aston Villa side who picked up a massive win against Arsenal in their last match. Matty Cash got the Villains off to a good start with his goal in the first period, but it was Arsenal that started the second half much better, and they managed to find an equaliser through Leandro Trossard just 7 minutes into the period. And with a solid performance from both sides, it did appear that they were going to cancel one another out. That was until Emi Buendía popped up for his stoppage-time winner after a scramble in the box. He fired his shot past Raya to snatch all 3 points at the death for the home side. 2-1 the final score to Aston Villa. In terms of form, that win for Aston Villa increased their winning streak to 5 in a row now. They've also picked up victories in 9 of their last 10 games, with the 2-0 loss to Liverpool being the only exception here. Additionally, on the road, Aston Villa are similarly strong. They've won each of the last 2 and 3 of the last 4 road matches. When we take a look at the head-to-head records, the last encounter between these sides came back in January of 2025. Jacob Ramsey wasted no time opening the scores for Aston Villa after just 8 minutes, but it would be the Hammers that would find an equaliser in the second half for a final score of 1-1. Longer term, that draw added to a 5-game unbeaten streak for Aston Villa over West Ham, winning 2 of these games. When we filter by matches played at the Olympic Stadium, however, Aston Villa are unbeaten in the last 3 encounters, with 2 draws and a win. My prediction for today's game is that West Ham are struggling this season, and it's not a very good time to be playing an in-form Aston Villa side at all. I do think that Aston Villa could win this one, and the odds of around 6-4 are quite tempting. However, there are 2 key factors to consider here. The first of which is that Aston Villa play Basel in Europe on Thursday night, whereas West Ham have an entire week to prepare for this fixture. The second factor to consider is that West Ham do seem to fare better in front of their home fans, both in recent weeks as well as the head-to-head record against Aston Villa. So whilst I'm tempted to back Aston Villa outright, I will be cautious and lay West Ham here for a full stake in bet number 2. Our third and final matchup in today's episode is the Tyne-Wear Derby, and it features 9th place Sunderland playing host to 12th place Newcastle. Sunderland, they were well beaten in their last match against Manchester City. Diaz, Vardiol and Foden all scoring in a 3-0 win for the citizens at the Etihad. The dominance in the scoreline was also reflected in the underlying statistics. Man City generated around 2 times the amount of efforts on goal and around 3 times the XG compared to the Black Cats. In terms of form, that result now means it's 1 win, 1 draw and 1 defeat over the last 3 for Sunderland, which isn't too bad. However, when we filter by the home form, Sunderland have been fantastic. They're unbeaten in all 7 of their home games on their return to the Premier League this season. They host a Newcastle side who got the better of Burnley in their last game. Bruno Guimaraes and Anthony Gordon secured a 2-0 lead at half-time for the Magpies, and their plight was also made a little bit easier when Pires was sent off in the 43rd minute for Burnley. However, against 10 men, Newcastle did manage to dominate the match, but they did struggle to break down a defensive Burnley side. In fact, when we take a look at the stats, it was the Clarets that generated a higher XG, but a lot of this did come from the 94th minute penalty, which was converted for Fleming, in the 2-1 final score for Newcastle. In terms of form, that victory for Newcastle extended their unbeaten run to the last 4 games in a row, with 3 wins in this sample. However, things have been tricky away from home. The recent win against Everton did break a 6-game stretch without a win on the road, and they'll be hoping this is a bit of a turning point in their season. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last encounter between these 2 sides came back in the FA Cup in January of 2024. Newcastle ran out 3-0 winners on the road, thanks to a Dan Ballard own goal and an Isaac brace. In truth, Newcastle did dominate the matchup, but Sunderland will take solace in the fact that their side is much changed since the last encounter. Longer term, it's actually been Sunderland that have been the dominant force in the Tyne-Wear Derby. They're unbeaten in the last 9 Premier League matchups, winning 5 of these games. My prediction for today's game is that at the start of the season, I would have marked this as a Newcastle win and moved on with my day. But Sunderland's hot form for a newly promoted side has given me a bit of pause for thought in this one. This game is set up to be a lot more competitive than I would have thought back in August. Both sides are pretty good going forward, but leave a little something to be desired defensively, and that's why I'm looking at both teams to score today. Sunderland have seen both teams to score in 2 of their last 3 Premier League games, and when we take a look at the home form, they've seen both teams to score in each of the last 3 and 4 of the last 5 games at the Stadium of Light. Whereas Newcastle, they've seen both teams to score in each of the last 8 Premier League matches, and away from home, this record stands at the last 4 road matches. When we take a look at the head-to-head record, the last Premier League game between these sides in 2016 did see both teams to score, but that was only 1 of the last 5 encounters. However, these numbers are around a decade old, so I'm not sure they're going to have too much bearing on a match played in 2025. All things considered, I'm going to back both teams to score for a full stake here in bet number 3, and the final bet of today's episode. So there we have it, 3 picks in today's episode, starting off with Arsenal versus Wolves. We're going to be backing the home side at a very short odds of 1.15. A £50 full stake should pick up £7.50. We've got two selections on the Sunday, starting off with West Ham versus Aston Villa. I'm going to be laying the home side, odds of 1.34, a £50 full stake to return 17, and I'm also going to be taking both teams to score in the Tyne-Wear derby. At the time of recording, the odds are not live, so I will update this in the following episodes. However, I will be backing this selection for a full stake here. So across the weekend, we're going to be risking £150 to pick up at least £24.50, and obviously this will be higher when I know the odds for the Tyne-Wear derby selection. If you made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content, and as always, have yourself a lovely day.